Greetings. It is Monday, May the 25th, Memorial Day, in the year of 2026, which could be pretty infamous eventually. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, on the road, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, as I said, this is Memorial Day here in the United States. It's a day where we honor our war dead, and we give thanks to those that are still alive. And maybe, well, their casualties as well. Like many customs, this is something that started up almost organically throughout the country, so much so that we don't really know who started it exactly, but it became custom at the last weekend in May that people would put flowers on the graves of war dead. And that, like many things in this country, started after the Civil War. You know, that nasty conflict where 2% of our population slaughtered each other? 2%. Do the math and see what that would be today. Well, it's something that became sold. It had different names. In the 1970s, it was formally made Memorial Day. It's a federal holiday, the last Monday of the month. And at the end of this broadcast today, I'll give you some ideas and thoughts on it, as well as how it's relevant to where we are and ways we could celebrate it so we'll get some good out of things. Anyways, what's going on now? Oh, well, another shooting attempt at Trump, an assassination attempt? Or is it something else? Everybody knows now what happened a couple days ago. A crazy person who had been intercepted by the Secret Service earlier, who thought he was God, apparently showed up at the White House outside at the checkpoint, which is on the corner of Pennsylvania and 17th, for those of you who've lived or have been to D.C. a lot. And he pulled out a gun, started shooting, and was neutralized, which is a polite way of being killed by the Secret Service. One other bystander was injured, critical last I heard. Hope they pull through. There's no indication it's anything except a crazy person who, well, there's a lot of them in D.C. and not all of them are in government. Let me explain something to you. When Bill Clinton was president back in the 90s, there was a case where someone flew an airplane into the White House, or tried to. It took out a tree that had been planted by Andrew Jackson. And there was somebody that ran up to the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue with a AK-47 and started firing at it. So we have that sort of stuff that goes on, but it happens all the time, except unless someone fires a gun or someone is seriously hurt or killed, the average American's not going to hear of it. I lived in D.C. for several years, and the neighborhood I was in, which was quite affluent, we had crazy people from all over the United States who'd show up. We had one case where there was a guy that had every conspiracy theory written in marker on his car, and he was running around, had American flags on it, or Gaston flags, or, you know the type of person, vehicle. And, well, we get a lot of that. But this guy parked, and in the back seat were two large jerry cans of some sort of liquid. Uh-oh. Well, it turned out to be water, but DC and Secret Service and everybody else involved in that, they never take chances. So the whole neighborhood was, cut off. Everybody had to run away, and you never heard about it. We had to eat in a restaurant that night, and that was pretty expensive, as I recall, but that's very common in DC. All sorts of crazy people show up. You hang out in front of the White House, you might joke with some of the Secret Service agents and about all the nuts that show up, and they show up. Now that brings me to something more important. Everyone talks about gun control, gun control, gun control. No. First, it's not going to work, and second, it's not the source of the problem. The problem is crazy people. We have too many crazy people on the streets of this country who, for some reason, the rather liberal, well-meaning, woke, what I call just plain insane political faction in this country thought it would be a good idea if we took all the mental people out of institutions where they were happily playing with crayons or knitting or talking to their dolls or something like that, and put them on the street and put them on an honor. You can tell I'm outdoors, huh? And put them on an honor system so that they would take their medication on time. Now, some of us have to take medication, and you know what? Even those of us who are sane forget. And if you miss your medication and you become a homicidal maniac, that's a bit of an issue, people. And there has been talk for a long time about reopening mental institutions in this country, and that's what's needed, sanatoriums. We're not talking about something out of a horror movie where people are chained and tormented or something like that. That used to be the case, but we're talking about homes for sick minds, and there's a lot of them. And the internet has not made it any better, because the internet, which those of us who were in on it in the beginning thought would bring peace and understanding to the world, never happens, does it? Well, it's turned out to give people so much information, or what passes for information, and often is just nonsense, an excuse to feed into their own psychoses. No, if anything is going to happen to stop this, it's going to be to round up the people who are mentally ill and treat them, or at least give them a decent place to live out their lives. We'll be better for it, and you know what? So will they. Okay, now, one of the things that people have these days is Trump derangement syndrome, which is something real. I've seen it. And but also people that are obsessed with what's going on overseas or ultra worried. Well, they do have reason to worry. Now, the real big story, of course, is the war with Iran that may or may not be on. There's a lot of psychological warfare going on right now, for those of you who don't know how these things work, and I'm pretty sure that's what Trump's doing. But the longer a war lasts, the more variables come into the equation, and the more possibilities there are for things to go wrong. So what we're looking at now, since this thing is dragging on a little bit too long, the Straits of Hormuz are closed, not closed. Oil prices are going through the ceiling, something that's really unnecessary. Gasoline is effectively doubled in some places. We don't get a drop of oil through the Straits of Hormuz, but market forces, speculation, that sort of nasty part of American corporate capitalism, that's what's hurting. Well, Iran may or may not be down for the count, as they say in boxing. They have been pretty much obliterated. There are videos of uprisings that are occurring in that country, but that's a pretty massive operation. And again, as I've said before, history can change on a dime if the right or wrong person is in the right or wrong place and does the right or wrong thing. Too many people want to know what the future is, and you don't know. The thing that we do know, though, is that the disruption to the global economy is quite real. Those of us who are at supermarkets these days, those of us who buy gasoline for our cars, which just about everybody, let's face it, our civilization, as I've said many times, runs on oil. No matter how much you think the future is going to be those silly bird choppers known as windmills, or solar power with things that are made in China that wear out, sorry, we run on oil. Just know that. And unless something changes soon, there's going to be a cascade effect. This is not speculation, this is the way things go, where everything is going to be too expensive for people to live. Remember what I've said continuously, diesel fuel, which is extremely expensive now here in this country, needlessly, but expensive, is used to produce food, it is used to deliver food and distribute food. And if it keeps going up, it's not going to be good for anybody, because everything will be connected to that. Everything is delivered by truck in this country. Railroads are not as big as they used to be, sadly. A lot of stuff comes from overseas, and that's ships and more ships that run on oil. No, this is something that has to end quickly. Now, the Iranian people are in some rebellion, but honestly, and this is just speculation, I'll bet you that the powers that be thought that the Iranian people would rise up, or at least their military would have a coup by now. That doesn't seem to have happened. If Iran is, the Islamic Republic of Iran is allowed to survive, it will be worse than if this had never happened. That cannot be allowed to happen. I'm sure the Israelis know that, and I'm sure the Americans know that. Hell, I'm sure everybody in the Middle East knows that. But you're dealing with a nation of religious fanatics who, if you heard my earlier reports, believe sincerely that the world is coming to an end and their savior is going to show up and they're going to go march off and take over the world, starting with Jerusalem. That'll go well, won't it? No, you can't negotiate with religious fanatics. You can only kill them. And that's just a fact. So it's important to remember that, yes, this is affecting us now, but only think and worry about what you can control. I see so many people out there questioning American military and foreign policy right now. It's a total waste of time, folks. It really is. It really, really is. Because the people in the U.S. military are career-minded, if you've ever met any of them. And they're going to do their best to win, whatever winning is at this point. Again, when this thing is all analyzed and declassified and looked at, hopefully that will happen in the future, I'm sure the story that we're hearing, especially from these so-called sources, is going to be very, very different from what really happened. Just don't worry about it until you actually have to deal with it face to face. Protesting, not going to happen, not going to do any good. Writing to your congressman, oh, the people have been trying to get rid of Trump for 10 years, not going to do any good. Just remember, beware of random events, as I was once told. But that's all you can do. The one thing I would be careful of, if you are traveling internationally or distanced by airline, and there's suddenly a major fuel shortage that happens quickly or instantly or unexpectedly or something like that, you could be stranded. Spirit Airlines went out of business. They stopped operating. Fortunately, there were other people that could take up the flights. But if you're over in another part of the world that you don't plan on staying for the rest of your life, and suddenly the airlines are not flying, you could be trapped. During World War II, people were trapped. If they found themselves in Panama or someplace like that, they couldn't get home. They stayed there for the duration. So just be real careful this summer. Hopefully this war will be over soon. Things will go back to normal, or what passes as normal. But if you're going to be traveling distance, and I mean long international distance, just be a little wary and be very careful, and go to the State Department. If you're an American, go to the U.S. State Department website, register if you're overseas. That will make a difference. Okay, other stuff going on right now. Gas and food prices, yes, that's a big worry. But there is something that's been going on that is a bigger worry, and that's Trump and what I'm calling the age of lawfare. And everyone knows how Trump was crucified wrongfully, if you have any honesty in you, when he left office, or when he was in office, and all the time, all the lies and all the garbage that was dumped on him was wrong. It was totally wrong. Lawfare. He was prosecuted, and we all know, if you've ever looked at those cases, I mean, has anybody bothered to read them besides me? All of that was nonsense. We have organizations that have been destroyed because the Attorney General of New York decided she didn't like them and sued them into non-existence. I'm thinking of an organization called VDARE, which is anti-immigration. Okay, they were in West Virginia. I don't know what they're doing now. You may not agree with them, but they were basically sued into non-existence. They went bankrupt because of legal fees. That's how you get people in this country now. You don't like them, just send legal people after them, or put them in front of a grand jury. They'll go bankrupt until they cop a plea. The age of lawfare. Donald Trump has taken some recent steps to prevent that from happening to him, using certain legal maneuvering and executive orders and all sorts of fun things. And that's a complicated story unto itself. But once a country reverts to using its system, to weaponizing its system of government, to destroy its enemies, and to gain power, it's gone. It's not coming back from that. And it's sad 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States on a nation of laws, well, it's pretty sad to see that the people that have been entrusted to maintain this republic of ours are using the tools that kept it going for so long to destroy it. That's what's happening. And that's the most dangerous thing going on right now. If you are at the wheels of power, you're going to weaponize more than ever in history the system that we have that's designed to protect us all. Trump has set off, not intentionally, but he's brought out the worst in people. Why that is, I don't know. Somebody's going to be getting a Nobel Prize at some point in the future for trying to figure that out. He's just a typical New York businessman hack. But people are attributing things to him that are just not right. Do I like everything about him? No. Do you think we could do better? Yes. Is he a dictator? No. But you can't argue with people that believe that sort of thing because, well, frankly, people aren't too educated. And that leads me to the end of today's discussion, which will be about education and reality and honoring people with honesty. Today is Memorial Day. It started off as a way of remembering those who died in the American Civil War. And of course, we've had many wars since then, and going into whether they were right or wrong, should have been fought, could have been avoided, and all of them could have been avoided, really. Well, quite simply, people are ignorant of their history, and they want to inflict that ignorance on others. Every time I go to cemeteries, I usually feel a sense of peace. Especially today. When I'm done here, I'm going to go off to a couple of veteran cemeteries. It's one of my own personal customs. I just walk among the tombstones. They tend to be very peaceful places, and in some ways, almost happy in a way, because the suffering of all those that are in the ground is over. But the one place I can't stand to go to is Hollywood Cemetery outside Richmond. Yes, Hollywood, not the Hollywood that we know and hate. Hollywood Cemetery outside of Richmond, which is a beautiful ancient burial ground where many Confederates are buried. And if you go there, the one thing you're not seeing are the stars and bars, the Confederate battle flag. Now, yes, they fought for something that many people would not agree with today, namely slavery, and slavery played a big role in it. For those of you who are into Civil War history, it was pretty much the thing that made it happen, but let's not debate that now. The fact is that they died for a country that they believed in. That country was defeated and reabsorbed into the United States, but they fought. It's also a part of our history, the Confederate flag. Now, none of my ancestors fought in the Confederacy. My great-great-grandfather fought for the Union, actually. And we never had anything to do with that, with slavery or anything else. But when you go to a cemetery, that cemetery for me, it just seems so sad, sadder than ever, because you can't even honor these men. We're getting into political correctness, but you know what? Political correctness is also insanity, because there were Confederate flags that were flying there when there were Union veterans walking through the city, when there were former real slaves who were alive. And they didn't protest it, they lived through it. People are asking for reparations now, even though none of them have ever suffered, and maybe at the hands of people who never did anything. California being the best example of that. No one in California held slaves, and there were no slaves in California. It's nuts. And when you dishonor those in your history who died in tragedy, under tragic circumstances, in a cause that had different sides to it, you dishonor all of them. And it's just plain wrong. Americans have started Well, I think it's this. Americans began to really lose it when they started losing touch with who they were. So hopefully there'll be some rebels, excuse the pun, who'll be planting Confederate flags at various places today throughout the country, but American flags as well. So I'm going to recommend you do this. Don't just go out in your backyard and put on some hamburgers and hot dogs. Especially this morning, go off to a cemetery. In this part of the country, especially the East Coast, or any cemetery. National cemeteries are all over the place. Just put National Cemetery in your search engine and you'll find one nearby. Just go there with your family and walk. Half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour tops. It won't be that long. And just look at all the names and realize something. They all had lives. They were all born, they were all children, they had mothers and fathers. They were happy and sad, they had tragedies and they had glories. They all had dreams and they all wanted to live. And they were cut down. And for those of you who think that the U.S. needs another civil war, you really need to go to these cemeteries. Just go there and look. Each one is a life. Look at the dates when they were born and when they died. How many were in their teens? How many in their early 20s? Now you'll find a few old men there. My late father's one of them. He lived to be in his 80s, but he lies in a cemetery, a national cemetery, right next to others who weren't so fortunate. Memorial Day is a holiday for a reason. It's a day of meditation. It's a day of contemplation. It's a day that we really do have to think. So take time out from your barbecue or your grilling, your beer and your salty snacks, and go out to a cemetery today. Just go. Think, remember, and be thankful. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies. And remember, the old military strategy is your enemies, if you do it right, could eventually become your friends. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I'm also up on other social media, but not Facebook. This podcast originates at Substack. My handle there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, clown world, the deep state, and all those who defile the history of the heroes of their nation must be destroyed. Good day.